Welcome to The Problem, a Lockwood & Co. podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
And this week we are changing things up because we found a problem. That's the name of our podcast.
Not that problem. Yeah.
So our original plan was to do each part of the book individually. So 5 episodes per book-ish. But part 3 was super long, so we split it up. And this week we are doing chapters 9 to 13.
Part 3 goes all the way to them having the meeting with the Iron Guy and stuff. It's like, wow. It just goes on and on. I was like, oh my God, there's too much. We take too long as it is. I didn't trust us to not have a 4-hour episode or something.
And if we had a 4-hour episode, I would revolt in the middle of it.
Yeah, I couldn't do it either. So,
and no one wants to listen to that. We blather on too long as it is.
Yeah, it's too much. So, part 1 and part 2, here we go.
Part 1 and part 2 of part 3.
Of part 3.
Yeah.
Part 3, part 1. Chapter 9 kicks it off. In chapter 9, Lucy comes home from the hospital and George yells at her for causing Lockwood's injuries.
That's what everyone wants when they come home from the hospital.
Yeah.
The chapter art in chapter 9 is, I think, some of the
Lockwood's artifacts?
Yes, artifacts. Great. I was trying to figure out how to explain them without using the strangely, kind of casually racist way that the book describes them.
It always calls them ethnic, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, there was a book that I read recently, I can't remember what it was, where they made a joke of that word. I think it was The Book Eaters. I told you, I was talking to you about that book. Yeah, and part of it's like in a library or something, and they talk about the ethnic books as like a whole different flavor or something like that, but it's like a joke. They're not being serious about it. But yeah, it's weird to call things ethnic because like everything is ethnic. Like, what do you mean? It's very othering.
Yeah, I don't like it. And it's never really addressed, but you very much get the feeling that Lockwood's parents went to other cultures and, I mean, hopefully traded for things, you know?
Yeah.
Hopefully bought, traded, left on good terms.
Took their stuff, though.
Didn't steal.
Yeah. One way or another, they took their stuff.
Yeah.
I guess they were, I don't know anything about this, but I've always had the sense that they were like just trying to find other ways of like addressing the problem. Maybe other techniques. They
were definitely researching it.
Yeah.
Like whether or not it was to solve or anything of that sort of ilk, or if they just wanted to know more, as researchers do. Which, I mean, you need to know more to solve issues, or to solve problems.
But they have the stuff up like decorations and trophies and not like, it doesn't feel like, I don't know, experimental stuff.
I mean, not the stuff you can see.
Right.
But the chapter really opens where we left off before the flashback. They're sitting outside a burning building after having sort of fallen out of it.
There's all kinds of little things of like the emergency people show up in like chainmail.
Yeah, I underlined that too because I like it. It's a good detail.
I like that a lot. Yeah. And just like thinking about, oh yeah, like adults have to go out into the night and you probably to solve problems like this with ghosts that are like ghost related emergencies. They just need special protective equipment. Like I just love how attentive he is to all the details of the world.
Yeah. We talked about this a lot during the show because we talked about the night cab drivers, and I think maybe we talked about ambulance drivers and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how they must have annual, this is who died this year parties.
Right. It's so much easier for Stroud, I think, to just drop a line like this than for like a costume department to have to be like, okay, we have everybody in chainmail.
Yep.
Are we going to have, like it's expensive.
I guess that's why they put them in the Monsters Inc. Hazmat suits in the show, because that's a little cheaper.
Right.
I would presume that's cheaper than having them make, chain iron. I turned the page so I don't have the word anymore.
The chainmail. Like, where's the Monty Python armor from Holy Grail.
They pull up in with coconuts instead of a fire truck.
That's a different
this is funny to
show
nobody
at
but
that
us.
point, right?
So I am so confused about the timeline of Lockwood here, because they've jumped out of the building and Lucy says that she and Lockwood are just sort of sitting hunched at the base of the bushes that saved their lives. And they have answered some medics' questions.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Lockwood has been ghost touched.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a problem now?
Yeah, this seems like a slowly evolving problem, like kind of like a snake bite or something. Like you're okay at first, but the longer it goes on, the worse you get, I guess.
I guess. I'm actually glad they cut this out of the show, because I feel like it lessens how dangerous ghost touch is.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because then Lucy's just sort of describing the scene and everything, and after a bit, Lockwood comes back and finds her. Like, his voice is saying, "Wake up, they want to take you to the hospital." And I'm like, was he still just sitting there beside her? Did he go and see people? What happened there?
Yeah, she I underlined everything before that. She has this moment where she just feels super guilty, and she's zoned in on her own feelings at that point. But yeah, I don't know what's happening with her. If she's fainted or what. Yeah,
she might just be super in her own head.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but
shocked. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
But he doesn't seem sick. He doesn't seem, he's not screaming. He's not injured. He's not oh no, somebody help me. He's just trying to be in charge.
Yeah.
And then he has to leave because Inspector Barnes is in the background of everything.
Yeah.
But we don't know who he is.
So what is happening with his ghost touch?
Right. It doesn't seem to have happened or something. I don't know. And they do make it in the show much more deadly, I guess, because at one point Lockwood asks her did the ghost touch you? And she's of course not. I'm still alive. So it's if you get touched, you're dead, is how it seems in the show, which is easier to understand.
Yeah. Anyways, there's a bit here where Lucy starts to tell Lockwood that this was all her fault, and he says, "Rubbish, it's my responsibility, don't worry about it." And I do really like that he's a team leader who takes responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. Yeah. It's true in multiple ways. He didn't bring the chains. It is his fault.
Yeah.
And she's just taking on the guilt in a way that is not appropriate, but is kind of typical, especially for her trauma.
Yeah. So then Lucy's at the hospital, and that's all fine, except she has this bit where she says, she wants to leave. And then the doctors protested a bit, but I was an agent, and that gave me leverage. And I'm over doctors? You're a child? And is the leverage they understand that they need their army in the streets to go die? Yeah,
right. Or is it, I have a sword, so all of you back away?
Yeah, no, because she left hers in the house.
Right.
So, that's a little bad. That's bad. That's not good. That doctors are just yeah, well, she's probably going to be dead tomorrow. Doesn't really matter what we do.
Yeah, I took this as a society privilege thing of I'm just more important. I don't know. That's just how I read what she was saying.
That's probably how Stroud meant it. But I just more important because they need them out there. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel it would be if a cop went to the hospital and they were I have to go back out into the wild streets of London to keep everyone safe.
Yeah, but police aren't generally 14 years old.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
And then Lucy goes home.
Yeah,
back to Portland Row. And George is there.
Treated wonderfully.
Before we get into the argument, George does say that Lockwood called him from the hospital where Barnes was waiting to take him away. When did Lockwood get to the hospital? Did they ride to get what? When did this happen?
Yeah, there's an ambulance for boys and an ambulance for girls.
Yes, of course. It's really not that big a deal, I guess. I'm just confused. So yes, then George and Lucy kind of blow up at each other.
Yeah, I think this is important for everything that we've gotten about George. That for me anyway, this recalibrated how I felt about George a little bit the first time that I read it. because we're so like in Lucy's perspective, she doesn't like George. They don't get along with each other. And it just seems like he's being an asshole again to her. But it comes out how Lockwood is hurt and George is just like been left behind and he's worried about Lockwood. And this all seems very like vulnerable to me on George's part. Yeah.
When he yells like, well, you should have been. And just like you should have stopped him getting touched in the first place. Yeah.
You see that he doesn't care about like making her feel bad or something like that. He is upset and worried. Mm-hmm. I do think that he handles it in a bad way, which I also kind of like, in a like typically masculine way where like I feel afraid and scared and therefore I'm angry and have every right to yell at a woman.
I don't think of it that way. Like, I'm not saying that's not a thing. I think of this as them just being young.
Yeah.
And not.
Yeah, exactly.
And not really knowing how to deal.
Right.
Or just letting their emotions all out. Because what I really like about this is they argue and they say some truly awful things to each other. But at the end of the chapter, they apologize and they're good.
That I think is huge. And it really makes a difference.
Yeah. And to me, that really feels sibling-ish to me, because you can say some truly fucking awful shit to a sibling. But at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, whatever. Like, you can say the most terrible things to your, like, if you have a good relationship with your sibling, obviously. You can say the most vile things to them and then go get a meal together and you're fine. So
yeah, that's the deep bonds of family kind of stuff. I think that's definitely the dynamic that's going on here. It doesn't, like, I don't expect that. The first time that I read it, I didn't expect that dynamic because everything that we had gotten from George is like antagonistic and petty and just like she just hates him. And so like this is very vulnerable, and then they make up with each other at the end, and you see that there's been like evolution in their relationship since she was hired on, which I think is also good.
Yeah.
Like it's there as read instead of like being spelled out moment to moment for us.
Yeah. He also mentions, again with my timeline curiousness, that when Lockwood was in the hospital, I think when he was in the hospital, he almost like didn't get treatment because he was trying to find Lucy. But I'm like, he was just talking to Lucy and he sent her to the thing. And I'm just like, what is happening?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it was like he came up with the idea of Ghost Touch after he had already written these other things and just didn't revise it, or I don't know. It just feels disconnected.
It's so weird.
And I know that people say that like he was ghost touched in the show. Like people have reached out and told us about that, and how there's like a picture in the opening of like maybe a ghost touched chest, or maybe it's Lockwood's chest, and that there's like a deleted scene and stuff like that. But it does feel like this issue is like so weird here in the book that it was just easier to cut it out. It's just simpler to have the ghosts be like, if they touch you, you die.
Yeah.
And that's just easier.
Especially in those first couple episodes when they're trying to like set the rules. Yeah. So the turn in George's anger here is really when Lucy says, "Shut up, George. There isn't the time. This isn't the time." And then he's like, "Well, when is it going to be the time? When you and Lockwood are both dead, maybe?"
Right. Yeah. There's even a little deviation. You can tell like it's an argument between people who really care about each other too, because there's like stockpiled ammunition of like, oh, here's something about you that pisses me off that we've never had to talk about.
Yep.
And he's like, you don't know anything about the visitors. You don't read anything I give you. You don't make notes on anything that you see. All you care about is like, getting sources. And then she like snipes back, that's how we make money, and you only care about books and you don't care about doing things. So there's like a lot of like, here's the shit about you that pisses me off, and it's not all about this moment.
Yeah, there's a really sort of popular headcanon in the fans, and I think a lot adds to it in this chapter and the upcoming chapters, that Lucy isn't great at reading because she was sent to be an agent when she was 8. And like she can read, obviously. She even says that later, like she kind of talks about it, that books were never really her thing. They were never really around. This idea that she's not great at reading, and George keeps giving her things to read, like complicated things to read. I think that just really adds to the dynamic there, and I like that kind of, like, it's not blatant, or it's not really even in the book at all, but it puts a perspective on their relationship.
For sure. And it also, yeah, I like how that evolves for her too over the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he is coming at her with everything he's got. You can tell he's really upset.
Oh yeah. And at one point when he's yelling at her, the skull jar is there, and like the skull starts making faces at George, or like is mocking George's face, and I'm like, oh, Skull's already on Lucy's side.
Yeah. He's got her back. He hates George so much.
Yeah.
I will say that by taking the ghost touch out, though, I do feel like you lose some of this in the show, of this like vulnerability from George in this particular way.
Yeah.
And that my feelings for George are much more wrapped up in their reading of him as autistic, and his alarm at like finding out that anything bad happened to them. Because like in the show, he doesn't get a phone call from Lockwood. It's just Lucy showing up in a hospital gown with no gear. And he's like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And so like, that's a totally different way to do this. And I don't know that it is as effective as it is here in the book.
I think it's just different. They took a different journey with Lucy and George's relationship in the show. But I think it kind of got to the same place. Yeah. But I guess we do kind of lose that George feeling like he's waiting for, his war buddies to get home. You know what I mean? Like, and who knows if they're going to. Yep.
Yeah, is Lockwood going to come back with both hands? Like, who even knows? Right?
Yeah. Oh, and I did just love George's sarcastic, you're fantastic. You just burned down our client's house. You're our best assistant yet. And Lucy's too right. I am the last one's dead.
The bar is low, George. I like that she doesn't give in to her guilt there as much as she's beating herself up. She's like, I am good. I go out there and kick ass.
I don't think that's what that is. I think they're just in the argument.
Yeah.
If she gave into her guilt, she would lose the argument. She can't do that.
Not until later, when she just hears everything that George said again, and she's like, he's right about me.
Yeah, exactly. And if that's not a sibling yelling at you so that it can keep you awake later, like, that's very real to me.
Yeah. Teenage drama.
There's George. That can happen anytime.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyways, then we find out about Annabelle.
Yeah, George also, I think this is like kind of a 1-2 puncher, or again, it was for me the first time that I read it, where, oh, George is vulnerable. He cares about other people. Oh, George is very competent and is really good at a part of the job that has been hidden until now.
Yeah.
And I also like that Stroud incorporates news articles into the book. I think this is really smart because it's kind of like blending similar media together. And the show does that too by having like news reports on television blended into the show. Right. So it's like, it really works when you use the same medium, I think. It doesn't work as well when they're like looking over newspapers and have to tell each other what it means in the show, as this is like really effective for Lucy reading this and George like interrupting her and all that stuff.
Maybe that's why they sort of condensed a lot of Annabelle Ward's sort of life story in the show.
Yeah.
Because you're right. If we had to just sit there listening to them read newspaper articles, that would be bad television.
Yeah, or have like a bad Pelican Brief style montage of like books piling up and people rubbing their forehead and getting coffee and like, oh, they're reading, they're thinking, like it's a little boring.
What a callback.
I'm just saying, like, there's things about that movie that I have to say.
I haven't seen it since the 90s and don't remember anything.
I carry grudges for decades. I don't care.
So do I, just not about that movie. Anyways. So it says they searched her house, but Lucy says they can't have looked very hard. And I just like that cops in every universe are crap at their job.
She probably ran away. Who even knows?
Yeah, exactly. Although, I mean, she was a young, rich white woman. Well, not rich, but, you know, a young, pretty white woman. You'd think they would have put some effort in.
Right. The problem was just getting started, though.
That's true. That's true. They were just like,
oh, no.
Everybody's dying left, right, and center. Probably just ghost touched in a well.
Oh, my God. That's the worst.
So then they're just sort of talking about, like, why Annabelle would come back now. And they make an interesting point about how a lot of furniture is probably made from iron and all these things.
I mean, George, like, immediately nails it just on, like, supposition. He's like, an iron bed frame in the room might have been enough.
Yes.
And Lucy's like, oh, yeah, there was a change.
So George is super smart.
Yeah. Which I think is part of the point of the whole chapter, is just to recalibrate everything that you might think about George and be like, oh, it's more complicated than it seemed.
And then I think we get into Lucy apologizing and everything.
Yeah, it's really, really good, though, because you like, again, you can feel their relationship has like depth to it and time has passed and it's all just like, I don't know. That's really good writing from Stroud, I think. He's just showing us that.
Yeah, and Lucy says, you know, you were right. We should have waited. And George says, well, I should have gone out to join you. So they both say things. And I wrote this down because I'm never going to remember to bring it up when we get to book 3. But I've seen a lot of people compare like Lucy to Holly as George is to Lucy in this first book. And I don't agree with that at all, because
Lucy is to Holly as George is to Lucy.
Because like,
okay, I see what you're saying.
Like Lucy came in to be the new person here, and it disrupts George's relationship with Lockwood, whatever it was, and when it was just the two of them, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I can see the similarities to a degree, but the fact that they can have this big argument and then apologize and admit where they were wrong right away, and that they have this really good relationship that allows them to do that, I don't think it's that similar.
No, I agree. I don't think it's the same.
And then there's more things going on with Lucy and Holly but I don't want to get into it until we're there, obviously.
Yeah, I do think there is stuff with George happening where he's like, I don't know that he has anxiety about his place in the company, but that he just slowly, the relationships evolve more around Lucy and are not centered on him the way that they used to be. And I think that does make him upset.
I don't know if I get that feeling. Like maybe I'm doing George a disservice saying that. I don't know. But I always got the feeling that he's good. Like he knows he belongs there. He knows he's smart. He knows, we don't know how long he's lived there with Lockwood, but it's probably at least a year. That's what the show says.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've never gotten that feeling that he's worried about his position, either like in the company or like emotionally. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he just, it's not the same though, because he has a relationship with Lucy, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Too. You know, that there's something real there between them as well. So like, I don't think it's all like, the show really plays it up, that whole angle of him like feeling left out.
But they do that when we get to book 2.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like,
I don't think it's happening here as much.
And yeah. So I don't know what I'm trying to say.
He does apologize for losing his temper, which was important to me. Because I think that's a big problem. Like I said, with men yelling at women and feeling like if they feel scared, then that the go-to emotion is anger.
Right.
And
Yeah.
You never apologize for it, but he does. And so I was like, oh, that's good, George. You should work on that more.
I don't know that we ever see George be angry again.
Not like this.
Yeah.
And it's directly tied to Lockwood.
Yeah, to them being in danger. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It like recalibrates how I read a lot of his snide comments and stuff, that it's like all of that is like defensive. I won't show you how tender I am underneath all of this. I'm just going to everything's a joke.
Which we talked about last time. Yeah. George.
Yeah.
Not wanting to be like everyone else, but also being too teenage to be genuine.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There's this bit where Lucy talks about having to, like, she has to go have a shower and get changed and everything. And George makes breakfast. And I don't know why, but the description of it always makes me want breakfast.
That's funny because, like, that part came up in the book and I was like almost gonna highlight it. And I was like, Caitlin will talk about this. I don't need to talk about it.
Yep. Wonderful. And then Lockwood rings the bell. And I'm just like, does nobody fucking have keys to this house? How do they get in and out?
It's very polite. Like, I don't want to interrupt anything that's happening in the house. I don't know.
They're probably arguing. I should leave them to it, but maybe also let me in. I've been ghost touched.
Does he make a big deal out of it? I feel like he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he's just like, staring eyes, hollow cheekbones.
I love the ending of this chapter. Glad to be home. Hey, what happened to my gourd?
Yeah, after Lucy's like, he won't notice.
Yeah. I
think they even call it like a fertility gourd, and I was like, I don't think that's a thing.
I genuinely, after I read that last line, I went back to try to find a bit about the gourd, and I only found a bit about her leaning on some wallpaper. I did not find a gourd.
Oh, yeah. When he apologizes, he's like, I broke that gourd, didn't I? And she's like, Lockwood won't even notice.
Oh.
He says,
okay, I was looking in the wrong spot. I can never find things when I'm looking for them.
He said, I broke that fertility gourd, didn't I? And that really bothered me because I was like, well, gourds are sacred because they contain the shape of the universe in the double chamber, blah, blah, blah. Like, I know a lot about this. And it was like, that's not a fertility. I guess, I don't know. Like, it could be a thing, but why would they care if they're after ghost artifacts? But anyway.
Maybe he's just making a joke about the shape of it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the Jonathan Stroud's editors made them change it.
To fertility. Actually, I really like that headcanon a lot.
That's what I'm going to go with. Yeah. So I wrote something here about the chapter art at the beginning of chapter 10, but I can no longer read it. It makes no sense. I don't know what I was going for. And that is the first time this has happened with any of my notes in this book, and that is a miracle.
We got all the way to chapter 10 before you couldn't read your own handwriting.
Yeah, that's genuinely a miracle. You have no, sometimes I'm just write a word and I'm like, I can see the G at the beginning. I'll know what it is. In chapter 10, Inspector Barnes from DPRAC tells the team that they own $60,000 in 4 weeks. Am I right in remembering that it was 40,000 in the show? Or am I wrong?
I don't know. I know they cut the time in half.
I swear it was 40,000. I could be wrong.
I was like, I don't know how to write pounds when I was writing the...
Oh, I said dollars, didn't I?
I was like, I know that you can do it, but I don't know how. So I just put 60,000.
I'm going to cut all of that out and I'm going to read it again.
Okay.
Oh, we're going to, you sound disappointed. You want to leave it?
No, I don't care. It's fine.
We can leave it.
I feel responsible. That was what that sound was I've ruined all of this.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Because I don't know how to write pounds. Early in the chapter, Barnes hasn't shown up yet. They're talking about like possible cases they could do. Like, what do we have, in the I think they call it the black file or something like that.
The case book.
Yeah, the case book. What can we do to get some money? Even before they know they have money troubles, they're always like having to pay the bills anyway.
Yes. And
it's not good. Like they're the slim pickings.
Yeah, the lady with the cat. Mm-hmm. She's probably hearing the cat again. But then we started talking about Annabelle Ward again. And I wrote that we're starting to get into it here. The mystery is presenting itself. Mm-hmm. And I like that. I like that setup of how it keeps kind of slowly coming back during this chapter.
And you would think that, yeah, it would be over because in their minds, like the source is all gone and everything. Mm-hmm. But I think it's smart to remind us as the readers to be like, hey, this thing still exists and it's important because it's the focus of the book.
And then just as Barnes is showing up, I wrote down that it kind of almost feels like, you know, when you get home earlier than your parents after school and they left you a list of chores to do, and then you hear their keys in the door and you're like, oh no, I did nothing.
That's a good description. I think that's exactly the emotion that Lockwood is feeling.
Every day of my youth. A feeling I know well. And then we get this like really detailed description of Barnes, and it's all for nothing because I picture him as Show Barnes.
Yeah, that's why I was being quiet. I was trying to flip to that part because that's what I think. I don't know how I feel about this. I go back and forth, so that's how I feel about it. Is that I think that some part of me says that like this is bad writing, and then another part of me is like I really love this.
Okay.
Where Stroud like constructs these characters who we are not supposed to like in like the physicality of him. He's a small man wearing a dark, rather crumpled suit. So like he doesn't look good. His shoes were brown and scuffed. His pants were too long for him. This like is kind of an emasculating description. It's like he's a child and, you know, like his clothes are too big for him. But then later it says that he's a lived in 50, which I think is such a sick burn. That like and all of this is like Lucy's perspective too, but she doesn't see him as like anybody who's like, he's not powerful, he's not, and that's nothing like Barnes in the show. He's like a real potent force, and this guy does not project like potency and power. Instead he seems like, because he's not potent and powerful, like that's why he's a government official and like, you know, lords it over people kind of.
Yeah, I've always figured that Barnes is what Kipps is destined to be.
Right.
Because from when like Barnes, I was going to bring this up later, Barnes has his interaction with Skull. So we can deduce from that when he was younger, he had talent and probably a good bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figure that he's just aged out of the system and now he's just here.
Yeah, this is what he does.
Now this is what he does. And instead of being part of the adventure, he's enforcing rules on the adventure.
Right.
And that's got to be shitty.
Yeah. Well, and it's what the whole system values, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you just find the source, contain the source, and like all the rules are just set up to reinforce that. And he's still a tool of that whole system. It's just that, I don't know, like I think what the show does is what in my mind is like quote unquote good writing, that your antagonists be potent, that they like you respect them and be scared of them, and then they get the W's and the protagonists get the L's. But that's not how Stroud does things at all. Like he's ridiculous as a person, and then the whole thing with Skull makes him look like a real idiot, and the kids like laugh at him.
Yeah.
Even though he delivers this like dire bill to them, when he leaves, they're like, haha, what a dope. I like that though. Like, I don't know. The book is like laughing at adults, laughing at authority figures. It's cool.
Yeah. Yes. I really like the line, as if all light and joy had been surgically removed from his person under local anesthesia.
It's savage, man. It's like, it's like it went right for his jugular. I don't know how much more you could describe a person to be like, you can't have respect for him.
Yep. He does describe what he first sees. I think it's the skull jar or something. He describes it as more foreign mumbo jumbo. Like there's more of that casual racism.
I like it from Barnes because, like, again, he is part of the system.
Yeah.
And so that all makes sense to me, that he would be like, well, we the English are like, we know what's up, and we like our way of doing things is the way. So that all makes sense to me.
Yes. And it is interesting because like you said, they make him ridiculous and just Lucy is just savage about him. And then he is angry and he's putting down these rules.
Mm-hmm.
And you have 4 weeks to pay £60,000. So like,
I mean,
after eviscerating him, Stroud does give him authority.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this is the central problem of the book in a lot of ways, is like it threatens the mortality of the agency. If they can't pay this bill, then it's over. So it's a big problem.
I also really like this because they show this really sort of personally or one-on-one with Lucy in the show. But here it's kind of with the agency and all three of them. Like if the agency gets shut down, they're probably still the three of them going to be in the house. And they're probably going to have to join the night watch and then die on the night watch.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not helping them. He's not protecting children.
No.
If anything, he's protecting the clients, the paying clients.
Right.
And that just feels icky.
Yeah, it's gross. He really doesn't respect them either. Like he tells them like, you're nothing but three kids playing at grown-up games. And like he even equates like all the artifacts.
The whole world is set up that way.
Right. But he like lumps in everything about their house. And like, he's like, everything in the house is a testament to this. The rubbish on the walls, like everything, it's all fiddle faddle. Like this is ridiculous. It's all a game to you. So he just has no respect for them at all. He just wants them gone.
And again, I feel like if everything had gone his way here and they had ended up like just on the night watch trying to make ends meet and then died a couple weeks later, he would have blamed them when he found their dead bodies, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh yeah, I couldn't have gone any other way.
Yeah,
they were
exactly
three idiots. Yeah.
God, I hate the system.
Yeah. He's convinced by it, I feel like. And I feel like this is all like, I do feel like this is Stroud saying something about like who the system attracts, what kind of person it produces, you know, because he's been through it since he was a kid, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And like Kipps, we'll see later, is a lot like this, like he's on the same track. And this is why the system is the way that it is, because these are the people who run it.
Which is interesting to think about because it's like it's Fitz and Rouncewell who set up this system.
Mm-hmm.
And like they must have had a hand in the creation of DPRAC.
Oh, for sure, I would think. And it's filled with their people, I'm sure.
Yeah, like Kipps, that was probably his original destiny, like I said, to fast track to the Barnes role.
Right. Yeah, it's got to get you inside to have Fitz on your resume.
Yeah. Obviously, Lockwood stops that from happening to him. But
I mean, you know, to like reference another really old movie, it's a lot like the EPA guy in Ghostbusters, I think. Like,
yes,
that guy's a real tool as well and is like made to look really ridiculous and like works for the government and all of this kind of stuff.
Yes, but that wasn't like that government agency wasn't like the Ghostbusters didn't set him up. You know, this is right. Yeah. If the Ghostbusters set up that EPA guy to go out and shut down all the other Ghostbusters. So it says something about Fitz and Rotwell.
For sure. Yeah.
And how they want the world to run.
Yeah. I think that Stroud's world building is so strong that you can make this conclusion like naturally.
Yeah.
You don't have to be told it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The chapter ends with Lucy and George kind of having a moment talking about how they're going to lose some jobs and already have lost some jobs. And I just like that after the big yelling argument, they have a moment without Lockwood together where they're sort of talking about things behind Lockwood's back.
Yeah, that's a good point. It serves to reinforce how their relationship survived the argument and stuff too.
And then chapter 11, Lucy is attacked by Annabelle's ghost and the trio seal her source. The locket Lucy took. And the chapter art here is a ghost lamp.
Yeah. Looks very different from the show.
Very different from the show. I'm glad they didn't go that
Traditional.
way.
Yeah. Traditional, like Victorian lamp design in my mind.
And yeah, Lucy wakes up in the middle of the night. And along with being stressed and anxious about everything and sore, she's eventually realizes she is too cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she stresses about stuff for like almost 2 pages first.
I think this is really good. How this feels exactly how it is to like have a sleepless night.
Yep.
And later to like be afraid of the dark. I think all of this is like really evocative. It's well written. It puts us back in with Lucy in a really intimate way too. Like it puts us deep in her head again, which we haven't been for the past few chapters.
This is definitely her going back to, it's all my fault. I made the wrong decision, just like I did at the mill. And now everything that happens is going bad because of me.
Right. Poor Lucy. Like, ease up, girl. It's okay.
But then she's quickly booted out of her own anxieties by imminent danger.
Yeah, the whole ghost lamp thing is kind of important for her. Like, she senses the cold, but she's like, but where's the ghost? And the lamp, the way that it operates, turning on and off, is what allows her to see where it is and then to get away from it as it's like coming over to the bed.
It's also like this lying in bed in the middle of the night, realizing there's something else in the room with you, but not knowing where. And so then being too afraid to move in case you make the wrong choice. Like, that is my worst fear. Like, or not my worst fear, but like, that is just so real to me. Like, I feel like I've been in that moment, even though there wasn't a ghost in my room. You know, you've just been there and been like, I don't, it's weird.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
You know,
when you're afraid, if you're afraid of the dark, like, this is how it feels. I think that's why I say it's so evocative.
Yeah. This is why I don't watch scary movies anymore. You know, like, I don't like that feeling at all.
Yeah. I mean, this is the scene, from Poltergeist with the kid looking at the clown sitting on...
I have never seen Poltergeist, and we are never saying that word ever again on this show.
It's so bad. That movie, like, really messed me up. I saw it when I was a kid. And he has, like, a toy clown. It's the worst.
No, I just said don't say it.
It's awful.
I hate clowns. God, they're the worst. Oh.
Yeah, it's very much like this scene. I've felt like this 1,000 times when I was a kid. Yeah.
I don't know what it is about, like, scary movies. They just get in my head and they don't leave for days, so I don't watch them.
Yeah.
Ever. Sometimes I look up Wikipedia summaries if I thought they looked like a good movie.
They still mess me up. It's one of the best things about being married to my wife is that she is not scared of movies. And so I'll watch a scary movie with her and I'll be shivering and be like, oh my God. And she'll just be laughing at the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I have her. She'll keep me safe. So
that's funny. But yeah, so she does kind of like slowly and then in bursts of speed get herself out of the room. And she admonishes herself for leaving all of her equipment downstairs. And I only bring that up because later she's going to get angry at Lockwood for doing the same thing. And I'm like, dude.
This was more fuel for the guilt fire, really. And then she's like, I expect you to have your shit together. Come on. Yeah.
Like, what do you mean it's downstairs? It's like, Lucy, yours is too, you idiot. And so then she runs downstairs, screaming their names, and tries Lockwood's door, and his bedroom door is locked. And I'm like, who does that? The only explanation I could think of is that George has definitely burst into his room at 6 a.m, being like, I figured it out.
Yep. Or just being like, yeah, look at this article, and like not even seeing that he's asleep and stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
That makes sense.
Because I feel like that's a big fire hazard, and they are known for burning down buildings. So why would you want to lock yourself in a room?
They're known for burning down. Harsh.
Well, I mean, it's on the news. But then, she's like genuinely kind of angry at Lockwood for not having his rapier and just having this iron like baby thing, which is so sad.
I think I think a lot of this is the classic Stroud like shifting of tone, where we had like this really evocative, scary scene of her upstairs, and now it's all like pretty funny.
Yeah.
We're going to fight ghosts with a baby mobile. We're not ready for anything. The doors are locked. George is like ready in 2 seconds with like kitted out like Rambo for ghosts, you know.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
So I like that Lockwood believes Lucy right away. Which either says that he is, you know, he finds Lucy to be a very reliable, trustworthy person, or he has a lot of shady shit in this house.
I believe you that a ghost is here. Yeah, sure. We keep that door locked up. Yeah. Downstairs.
Yeah. We have the best moment when George is like, I might have something. Hold on. I'm not sure. And goes back into his room and comes out with an arsenal. I love that so much. Obviously, I'm jumping ahead here, but obviously that's my best joke. It is my favorite.
It is really good. Yeah.
There was no other option.
It's impossible for me to picture it with his pants on either because of the show.
Of course.
There's a bad joke right before that where they're like, he's a heavy sleeper in more ways than one. And I'm like, don't do that.
That's terrible.
Lockwood's constantly doing that. Yeah, George really plays it down. He's like, it's a few little bits and pieces I keep on my bedside. Always good to be prepared. You can borrow a salt bomb if you want. Which is good.
I have like a 2 tall stack of books beside my bed. Like there's like 10 of them. I'm not reading any of those. They're just there. That's what I don't have bombs is what I'm saying. I don't.
But somehow it's still a fire hazard. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the amount of books in my, it's not good. The amount of candles and books that I have, it's not good.
Oh yeah, you shouldn't do that.
I live in fear, but I don't change it.
You'd be like, I put the candles on top of the books.
Technically, I put the candles on top of my fireplace.
Oh, good.
It's electric though, so it's fine. So then, George is a little less believing of Lucy. Not less believing, but like, where did this come from? Where did you get a source? And I'm like, you keep sources in the basement. Mm-hmm.
I think later it even says that there's some around the house when the break-in happens, that they're just like in silver glass cases around the house with all the other knickknacks.
Yeah, well, at the very least, Skull is.
Yeah, exactly. So like there is shit everywhere in this house.
And let's not forget that there's a mysterious locked room. What the fuck's in there?
Right, like who even knows?
Yeah.
It's not any of these things, but like it's plausible.
I mean, there's other things than what you know in there because you haven't read the later books.
I just mean that like this is Lucy's fault, but like it could not be Lucy's fault. Like
and also
it's
like
possible.
Lockwood knows the stuff that his parents brought home, you know, like Lockwood, I don't know. Well, I mean, Lockwood does believe her, so that's fine. But it seems funny to him to be like, where could you have possibly gotten a source? But anyways, she did steal it. So I guess George's suspicions were kind of right.
And I think that you're also coming around as the reader. Like if you're aiming this at like 10 to 13-year-olds, this is like trying to get you, okay, you understand what a source is and you know that she took the locket. And this is to get you to the moment where you're like, oh my God, I know what it is. Kind of the same moment that it happens for Lucy.
Yeah, that's fair.
So George is like putting pressure on the narrative in that direction. Because I don't even think Lucy understands what it is until they're talking about it.
Yeah, until they're talking about it. And she's like, oh no.
Right. She's like, yeah, actually, this is my fault.
My note on that, I just, at the end of the chapter, just wrote down, oops.
You're right. Yeah. Classic. And this is another like, teenage behavior. This is one of the things that I really like about them as characters in the story is they're allowed to do things like this.
Yes. Oh, and also how she ends the chapter by just saying, I was going to mention it to you that I stole her necklace. But on Lucy's side here, she went to the hospital. There's 60,000 pounds in debt.
Yeah, a lot happened.
Yeah.
And it also has like in her rumpled nightie, her bandaged, disheveled state, she smiled as prettily as she could to be like, oops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. And we go to chapter 12, where Lucy connects to Annabelle through the locket, and Lockwood realizes that solving the murder could also solve their problems.
That's a well-written summary there.
There you go.
Well done. The chapter art is of the necklace in the like silver glass case necklace.
In the other necklace
that they put it in.
The necklace, the incepted necklace.
I do like the art of it here though, because it is something that I have trouble imagining. So it was nice to see it here.
Yeah, it makes sense. And a teapot.
Yes, of course. But I can imagine a teapot, funnily enough.
That's easy.
Yeah, I have a million of them. And now I guess, well, I don't think we're yelling at Lucy again, but we're certainly not happy with Lucy here at the beginning of this chapter.
Yeah. They're like, you're right to feel guilty, actually.
How dare you do something against the rules? That's not our thing.
Yeah, I do think he's a bit... Lockwood can really be harsh sometimes. He like really gets off into like an argument and just be like, and another thing, when he is like mad at Lucy about doing her job in a way that I feel like is unfair.
Well, yes, but they're all very young here, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like if he hadn't, it all goes back to the chains for me and like his responsibility. And then he's like, you kept secrets from me. And it's like, dude, I had a long night.
Yeah. Yeah, like this is, is this
she just forgot.
Is this the following night, I guess? Like the night after they were at? Yeah. So it's barely been 24 hours. Yeah, that wasn't one of the things she was thinking about, like, oh, and I can't bring myself to tell George and Lockwood. She just forgot. Yeah. She didn't remember that she had it. So, I mean, it's a little careless, but whatever. He's like coming down on her too hard, I think. But I do also think that he's probably very stressed about losing his home, potentially, or his business, Yeah, it's not about her. Yeah, I think everyone's a little stressed out. And also they were just woken up in the middle of the night. So who knows that he's gotten a full night's sleep yet? I don't think so. Yeah. I think the dialogue also serves to, like, again, we're aimed at this younger audience. Mm-hmm. And there's like the moment where like Lockwood kind of explains to her, she's like, well, the source was destroyed because it was her body. And then he's like, it only seemed that way. Like you covered her body with the silver net and that covered the necklace too. Yeah. And so that's how this can be a source. Like the author is not tricking you. We just made a bad assumption. And so like, I think that would kind of blow a kid's mind a little bit and be like, oh yeah, I see. So like you're following the rules of the world building, but you're like nesting surprises in there for the reader down the line. Right. In ways that are satisfying. And it's written well because like even reading it as an adult, I didn't feel like I was having unnecessary information explained to me. It just felt like an argument they were having. Exactly. Yeah. It's in character. It makes sense for them. And it explains it to the reader. Like, I think all of this is like really well done. Yeah. But then Lockwood's tirade gets interrupted and he can't quite find his way back. But he is upset that his tea goes cold, which is fair. And then we start off with a news story about them. I don't have any notes on the next couple pages, but I do have a note here about, because we do get a little bit more about what sources are and like how they work. Mm. It says like, what I mean is the source is whatever the visitor is most attached to, isn't it? It's what it holds most dear. And so they're like, it should have been the bones, but like, no, it's this locket. So why is it this locket? Like the fact that it's a locket really matters, because you would think that you would be upset about your body being hurt, while you're being murdered. But it's like the emotional focus is on this locket for whatever reason. That is such an interesting thing to say, that so often it is their bodies that hold them. I'm sorry, I'm just coming to this realization now, because most people don't really think about their body. Mm-hmm. Like it's not like it's just you don't think of it as, I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, but like I agree. A lot of people don't value it the same way we value like a pretty necklace or that someone gave us. You know what I mean? You don't think about it, you don't dwell on it. Well, yeah, you don't see yourself in the mirror and then be like, oh, remember that time, the way that you do when you like look at a picture. Yes, that's what I mean. Obviously, body image and that sort of thing is a different matter. That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah. It makes sense to me that people in the moment when they die would be like upset about their body and emotionally invested in it. Having to see it from the outside for the first time. or being like stabbed or something. Yeah. I guess. It's like, interesting. Yeah. So, and I think it's also important here that they focus on like, it's their like emotional attachment, that emotions are like really important for the sources. So this is like really telling us something
about the world and like how the ghosts work and stuff. So it's pretty important. And it's, you know, it's here in the dialogue, and they're kind of sketching out like why they're trying to figure out, just like we are, like, why is it this way with this ghost? Like, they're being detectives here in an important way.
And then Lucy asks if she can get the necklace out.
Right. Because she wants to connect.
Lockwood says yes. I enjoy that she asked his permission, which is obviously very different than anything she did with the necklace in the show.
Yeah.
And she notices that there is an inscription. Yeah,
I think, I don't know where I put my note about that, but I think it's like the way more easier to have inscriptions on a necklace. I talked about this in the show than on the ring.
You called it a locket just more room. A moment ago. I don't think we know that yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because George steps on it in the previous chapter, but they didn't really like look closely at it. It's just
because like
necklace.
They figure out that it opens much later on, and that's when they find the other inscription.
Right. Yeah. But it has all this stuff on the outside of it. And that just makes sense to me because there's like enough room to have a few words. And on a ring, there's just not much space.
Yes. No, I agree. Although, I mean, they made it work in the show, but yes.
Yeah.
They cut out this inscription entirely.
Yeah.
I did briefly want to just say that Lucy has that line where she says, besides, you wear these things so you can have your loved one's message next to your heart, which is just an interesting thing to say considering the sheer number of necklaces that Lockwood gives her in this series.
Yeah, I thought
mean,
that
it's
was
only
part of the
2,
reason.
but still.
Yeah, I talked about that in the show too.
Yeah.
That I think that's why they made it not a necklace.
Oh, well. Yeah, because with the smooshing the books together. That's fair.
Yeah. There is a moment here that I think is kind of important for this being a detective story where, what is it? This is just narrated. Nobody's saying this, so it's Lucy thinking it, I guess. It says, with the body turned to ashes, this necklace was all that remained of Annabelle Ward, of her life and death, of her whole unknown story. And we were going to toss it in the fires too. It didn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
And so like this is the pursuit of justice for its own sake. Like there's no profit in it. And this is like the heroic character of a detective. Like they go after justice even though there's nothing really in it for them. No one's paid them to do this. Like Lucy feels like she needs to do this because it's the right thing. And
then as soon as Lockwood sort of catches on that it's a good mystery they could solve, like the line is, you know, his eyes were shiny. He'd sat up suddenly. The gloom that had enveloped him all morning had suddenly disappeared, like white clouds on wind. I love this about the book because by having multiple characters, we can have one character who's in it for the heroism and another character who's like, we can spin this shit into gold. Yeah. Like we can make money off this. And for Lucy, that's not the point, but Lockwood's like, we got to save our asses. Not that she's not in on that deal, but like, yeah, it's just not what occurred to her. Yes. This might surprise everyone, but they make a good team. Right. Yeah. I really love that by splitting up, by not having just one detective, which is the typical detective story, you like can do this dynamic that is really, really cool. And then in something that the book did very differently than the show, Lockwood kind of eggs her on into trying to connect with the necklace. Yeah. I think that's important too, because it makes him parallel to Barnes later in a way that I think is interesting when they bring her in for the Hugo Blake thing. We won't really get there this time, but I don't know. Like, to me, I think that's interesting that Lockwood is like tied to Barnes in some narrative parallel way. But in the show, they don't do that. It's all about Lucy wanting to connect to Annabelle or needing to. Both are good in different ways. Yeah, in different ways. Yeah. So then, we get Lucy connecting with Annabelle through the necklace. And it is like much deeper than we saw her connect with the objects during the interview. Because she doesn't say she feels things or something. She says, I was sick with jealousy and rage. Yeah. Talking about herself as though she is Annabelle. It's so well written too. That's the part, I think I have it
down here too. A great bulb of happiness spread out to fill my world.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff. And and it like she lives through this toxic relationship at the same time, and it's all very powerful.
But then at the end she screams and is jolted out of it. And like Lockwood is holding her up in the chair, and then George rushes in and like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, he wasn't a part of the experiment.
Yeah.
Which I was like, oh, right, they didn't do that. They did in the... I'm trying to see what kicked her out of it.
I think it was hearing herself scream.
Oh, okay.
That's what I think. That's what it sounds like. Because she hears a desperate shriek of pain, and then a shriek she realizes was her own.
Yeah, she broke her own spell. I like that Lockwood apologizes, and that he seems genuinely to be upset and care about her well-being, and not immediately go like, but could you do it again? Like, he doesn't do anything like that.
No, it says, his face was white. I didn't think it was going to be. I don't think he thought it was going to be that Lucy was going to go that deep. Right. He thought she would just get some impressions like she did previously.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think this is important too, because it's like, I'm starting to realize, like, as we're like slowly reading this book and being so like thoughtful about it, that like I didn't understand in the show and in the book, I guess too, when George is telling her like being a listener is dangerous. And every time he says that, I'm like, that's stupid. Like, why is it dangerous? Why is it more dangerous than being able to see or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's because if you really listen to someone, then you like have empathy for them and you like put yourself in their place. And that is like, that can eat you up in the way that it does here.
Yeah, I feel like the books never go that deep into it. But I mean, in a joking way, like last time George talked about a listener who walked off a building and died or something like that, walked into the Thames and drowned.
Oh, right.
Right. But so, but it was presented in a jokey way, but like it must be, there must be situations where listeners can get pulled into what happened to a ghost while they are still in a haunted building, right?
Yeah.
Like experiencing the ghost's death.
What happened here?
There,
she's not even in the place where it happened, and she's like so strongly drawn in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of her strong talent.
So that's got to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And just in general, reliving people being murdered, or in some cases, you might be reliving being the murderer.
Yeah, exactly. The way that she really doesn't like that watch.
Yeah. From
the interview, because for that reason, she's like, oh, this is vile. Yeah, because I just think that shift in perspective, it could change you. Yeah, if you're holding that watch and you are the killer, like you're taking that into yourself in a way.
Yeah, if Stroud wrote these characters as adults, I'm sure he would take Lucy to a real dark place with some of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a cool idea. I think it is there for you to like pick it up. It's just not super explicit.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the really important narrative piece of information that we get here from this whole vision is that Lucy feels sure that the man who gave her this necklace, he's the one who killed her too.
Yep.
And that's why this is the focus, the source, because it's like directly tied to the murderer and her.
Mm-hmm. Good thing we only have one more chapter. Can you imagine if we were doing the whole part?
I know. I keep looking at the time and like, ugh.
Wow. All right, chapter 13. The trio go to the library and learn about Annabelle's ex-boyfriend, Hugo, but are interrupted by Quill Kipps, everyone's favorite. The chapter art in this one is a unicorn on a, like a shield? Yeah, like a...
laurels?
Yeah, and I'm fairly certain, I could be wrong, it is the logo, the Fitz logo?
Yeah.
The Fitz unicorn. Which is hilarious because we have a moment with some Rotwell agents in this one. Although I guess Kipps is from Fitz. I don't think of him as that way. That's what it is.
I think that's what it is.
I don't. Okay, I got there. It's not weird anymore.
But
I was writing down my notes on this and I'm like, we only hear about Rotwell agents in this one. Where does why Fitz?
Why isn't it roasted chestnuts? Yeah. The thing about this picture that like really leapt out to me was that the unicorn is holding a lamp,
Oh yeah, yeah, like a lantern. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because like the name Lucifer like means the person who carries light.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what a Lucifer was a job you could have in medieval times, and then that job just got associated with Satan.
Interesting.
And so I don't know, like when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, it's a Luciferian unicorn. Like, I don't know, like it's kind of right there if you want to see it that way.
That's interesting with Lucy being Lucy.
Oh, true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I don't know if that has, like lucent and light, and that, I wonder if that has anything to do with the name Lucy. Anyway,
it must.
How much longer can this podcast be?
So we're going to go to the library, I think.
That's right.
I don't have any notes the first couple pages. Yeah, they get on the train, they're heading for the archives. And just sort of talking about their plan, solve the mystery, get attention, get more jobs, save the agency.
Right. That's my first note too.
Do love the moment, not just because it's kind of funny, but I do love the moment where they see Rotwell agents handing out free food.
It's really good.
It's so interesting. And like, oh, the kid is no more than 10, which means they have these young children are doing advertising for them.
Yes. This is like a PR stunt.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how Lockwood is like really upset about this, but he's also like in the middle of his own PR stunt for his, like, I know that there's exploitation happening here. He's not mad about that, by the way. He doesn't care that they're... He
doesn't want to be doing advertising for them.
Right. He just doesn't want to help a competitor. That's what this is about. But it is funny to me that, like, they have the resources to do a PR stunt like this, where like innocent children give you this thing to remind you that we are keeping you safe, blah, 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 blah. And he wants to like construct this whole kind of viral story campaign around the murder to save the agency. I don't know. There's similar things in my mind.
Mm.
He's not, I think that's part of why he's so mad, is because he's like, oh, that's a good idea, but I just don't have the resources to do it.
Interesting. Okay. I guess I like to give them a bit more, like, I don't like to think of Lockwood as being too similar to Fitz and Rotwell, but you're not wrong.
George does it anyway, by the way, because he doesn't give a shit about the rules.
Oh, yeah, of course. He's just like free food. Have you ever eaten a roasted chestnut? They have the weirdest texture.
Yeah, they're okay.
I like the flavor is fine, but when I bite into a nut, I don't expect it to be cakey. It's so weird. Messes with my brain. I love when they get to the archives and George is just in charge. He's like, okay, we're going to go here. You're going to be quiet because the librarians are picky. You're going to look at this. You're going to look at this. I'm going to look at this. And then we're going to do it. And they're like, okay, yes, sir.
And the whole time that he does that, he has chestnut stains all over his face, by the way.
Yeah.
It does say that.
I love George. I mean, I love them all, but this is just a good scene. It's very George.
Yeah, they're a little overwhelmed. George is in his element.
And this somewhere in here is where Lucy talks about how books and reading were never a big part of her life.
How could it be? I mean, she went there when she was 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She says that she has memorized the Fitz manual for ghost hunters, and like she took exams, but that's about it. I
mean, that's just survival.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like child soldiers. It's like, I read the manual on how to break down my gun. Like, of course you did. Like, you need to do that. I just really like the stuff that they find in here that's like more world building about like the early days of the problem. That's the stuff that Lucy finds. She doesn't find like any of the good stuff for the case, but she finds like the good stuff for the world building, which is what I care about more anyway. So where it talks about like the early days where ghost lights are being erected and that they wanted graveyards to be bulldozed and sow salt everywhere. And then they're like, that's too expensive. We'll just put fences around everything. I'm like, oh, we'll just make nightmare plantations throughout the city. I see. It's too expensive.
Because of who we know, like we know that Fairfax Iron turns out to be like the bad guy in this book. People aren't expecting us to be spoiler free, right? Whatever, it doesn't matter. So it's interesting it's just an interesting point that they were like, no, we can't salt and bulldoze. We're going to put up iron everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that was a policy decision influenced by
a murderer, rich person. Perhaps.
Yeah.
Like we just see his influence kind of everywhere without knowing it. And they were even talking about, the prevalence of iron furniture earlier and how it makes sense to have an iron bed frame. And
that's a really good point, that it's not just like cool world building for me, that it is like the influence of the antagonist all throughout the book. You just don't even know it explicitly.
Like, I'm not necessarily saying that that's what Stroud was thinking.
Yeah.
Because he maybe not. Or maybe he wrote these things and then at the end was like, oh, let's make him an iron mogul because I've been talking about iron all this time.
Right. No, I think you're totally right, though. It is there.
Yeah.
It's true.
Even like forgetting the iron chains was what started everything off. There's been so much iron.
Mm-hmm.
So then we meet Kipps.
Will Kipps.
And his team. And I love that he walks in and says, hello, Tony. And then Lucy is just like, Tony? What? Are these like the best friends ever? And she's like, oh, no, the other end of the scale. Yeah.
I mean, again, the way that Kipps is described is just like Barnes to me.
Yeah.
He's very slightly built, almost bird-like in his delicacy. He probably weighed less than I did. Like, he's not heroic in any way. He's not powerful. He has a small upturned nose, a freckled face, auburn hair. It's like all of this is a slam on him. So,
yeah, and I did not, my first time reading this, I did not put together that Kipps was like an adult man.
Yeah.
Who has a grudge against this 16-year-old boy.
Which is even more pathetic.
Yeah, it's so pathetic. And that they like win here so bad.
Yeah.
Like
he does not come off as like a potent antagonist. This is just a huge W for them. And so like all of everything I've been taught about writing is like, that's not how you do it. But this is very like cathartic and satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're a kid who's like, you're a bookish kid you probably get bullied, you probably feel like an outsider, this probably feels good to read.
It feels like, good fuck to
that
read.
Guy.
And yeah, fuck that guy. But you also know that like Kipps isn't in danger of losing his job at Fitz. He's not,
right.
Fitz isn't in danger of going under. So in a way, he still does win at the end of this argument, but just not in the competition to be cool,
mm-hmm.
which to a teenager is much more important than paying the bills.
Yeah, he's on the right team. He's on the winning team, but he's not like a star player or anything like that.
Yeah. Also, he calls Lucy sweetheart, which... Ugh.
Yeah, always bad.
Also, all these things that they talk about Kipps and his team messing up, like somebody threw out the wrong bag, so they just threw out a source, I think. Like all these wild things. But it just goes to show that everybody's kind of a mess. Like whether
True.
you're Fitz, Rotwell, or you're an independent agency, everyone's fucking up. DPRAC just doesn't like the independents. Probably because they're not getting paid by them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, they threw out an arm bone incorrectly and it attacked someone. But it probably has something to do with Kipps's poor leadership as well, I would think. Like he has a high mortality rate around him in a way that is like, it's not just Fitz fucking up, it's like him.
But he is pretty well known at Fitz. Like isn't he?
He's high up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. To me, it just says that the whole ghost hunting business is messed.
Yep.
And no one's doing anything about it. And then they have a sword fight in the library, which I can't imagine. Like, can you picture yourself a couple tables away, just reading an old newspaper, and not only do two kids start sword fighting, but they were allowed to bring swords in? Maybe this is normal?
Right. Yeah, it's really weird. What's weirder is that after that happens is when they do their research. They flip that around in the show because it makes way more sense to like, we had a sword fight and now we're leaving.
Yeah.
Because like, you're going to get kicked out or something.
Maybe agents don't.
I guess. It's got to be the worst job if you're a librarian. You'd be like, again, the 14-year-olds are sword fighting on the 4th floor.
It's got to be a weird world where teenagers are held in such needful jobs where they get to have power over adults.
Yeah. It's probably also why Kipps and Barnes are so petty, because like if you grew up with all that power, then you like lose your talent and you're in like an authority, kind of job, you would just be super petty all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And not like you lost your power in society and you also lost your like psychical, mystical power.
Right.
You used to have fantasy powers and now you're just an adult.
Yeah.
If that's not a great metaphor for leaving behind childhood, I don't know what is.
It makes a lot of sense if you think about it in that way.
Yeah. And then there's all these kids that still have both that society power and that mystical power who now you're technically in charge of, but you're jealous of them, but also you hate them. Like, yeah, they make sense as characters.
Yeah.
Anyways, they do their research. It's probably Hugo Blake, so we know it's definitely not Hugo Blake.
Right. Yeah. So this is the introduction of a red herring suspect, classic detective novel move. I think it's a really good version of that. Because the thing about a red herring suspect is they need to be plausible. Like the detective needs to not be an idiot to assume that this is the person, right? And so we have like a really good reason to think this because we know that the locket was given to her by someone that she was in love with. This was her boyfriend. The police suspected him at the time. So like all the pieces fit. I think this is a perfect red herring for like a 10 to 13-year-old detective story. And I bought it when I was listening to the story originally too. I was like, yeah, sounds like the guy.
Oh, I don't think I ever did. I think I thought, oh, this is obviously the red herring.
Right. Yeah. I should say that like I, as a reader, am the cheapest of dates. Like whatever you tell me, I'm like, Like, I just believe you.
I am usually like that also, but I don't think I was with Hugo Blake.
Yeah.
I'm definitely one of those people who like someone else will review a book and say, oh, I saw that coming a mile off. And I'm like, how? That was so surprising. I was surprised.
Yeah, because I want to be surprised. I don't want to figure it out.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's no fun.
But I don't know. Hugo Blake, I was like, obviously not him. He looks too good for it.
Yeah, it's too early in the story to get the real guy. But this all works. I think it's good.
And that is where we are going to pause for today. You're welcome for not doing the whole thing.
I know, right? It just keeps going and going.
What was your best joke? I already went over mine. George and his arsenal.
Yeah. So mine is the description that Lucy does of Kipps and his team leaving is just like a wildly sick burn. It says, he spun around, his lackeys did too, like a small, poorly trained dance ensemble. They flounced away in unison towards the elevator. And it's just like, after his fly was unzipped, after he lost his sword and had to climb on the table and jump over and over to try and get it down, then she like does this to him. And it's like, damn. So
I wonder if Kip slept that night and not just went over and over all the things he should have done and said.
That's what he should do every night, is be like, I'm the worst.
For most punk rock, I wrote down how they kind of trick Barnes into meeting Skull.
Oh, that's really good.
Because Barnes is all, you owe 60,000 pounds. We're going to shut you down, blah, 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 blah. And then they just end up laughing him out of their house. Yeah. Even though they are very worried.
Lucy thinks of him as a howler monkey at one point. It's pretty bad. There wasn't any like strong punk rock.
There wasn't really.
I thought of like Lockwood coming up with the plan to like solve the murder and turn it, spin shit into gold. Like I said, I was like, that's pretty punk rock, but not really. I don't know.
I think I previous to that, I was going to say sword fight in a library, but I don't think punk rock is really against libraries.
No, it's also like just dumb. It's childish what they're doing. Yeah, so I didn't have any lore stuff this time or anything like that. I think we've talked about everything that can fight a ghost anyway, so.
All right, well, if you have anything to add, you can follow the show on Twitter at Lockwood Podcast, or you can follow me on Twitter at Inferior Caitlin.
You can send us emails, contact@hollowgroundmedia, or go to the contact page and fill out the form, hollowgroundmedia.com/contact.
And remember to taunt the police officer in your home.